Chapter 37 A Desperate Battle. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Mara and Kale stood on the precipice of the impending confrontation. The high-profile event, initially a grand celebration, had transformed into the battleground for their mission. The stakes had never been higher. The assassination plot they had so diligently worked to prevent was now at a critical juncture. Every passing moment seemed to heighten the urgency of their task, underscoring the gravity of their responsibility. The weight of the situation was almost tangible, pressing down on them as they prepared for what was to come. Mara's mind raced with strategies and contingencies. Her gaze frequently shifted between the event's main stage and the VIP area, where the leaders they were sworn to protect were gathered. The once festive surroundings now felt like a ticking time bomb, with every cheerful noise and exuberant display masking the sinister threat that loomed. She knew that the moment the assassination attempt was executed, the chaos would be overwhelming, and their ability to respond swiftly and decisively would be crucial in averting disaster. Kale, his face set in a mask of concentration, was equally aware of the looming danger. His role in the operation had been to assess and counter any security breaches, and now that duty was more critical than ever. He meticulously reviewed the event's layout, mentally mapping out the best routes for intervention and escape. Every shadow, every movement within the crowd was scrutinized for any sign of threat. His mind was a whirlwind of tactical considerations, each scenario weighed against the need to act quickly and efficiently. As the moments ticked by, the tension only seemed to escalate. Mara and Kale exchanged brief, determined glances, each understanding the gravity of their task without needing words. Their earlier planning and preparation had brought them to this point, but now it was their ability to stay calm and execute their plan with precision that would determine the outcome. The crowd's unawareness of the imminent danger only added to the pressure, making their mission all the more critical. With their roles clearly defined, Mara and Kale prepared to spring into action. The assassination plot was not just a personal threat, but a potential catastrophe that could unravel the fragile stability of their world. Their training and experience had prepared them for high-stakes situations, but the reality of facing such a dire threat was a test of their resolve and skills. Every move they made was calculated to ensure the safety of their leaders and the prevention of the impending catastrophe. As the event continued to unfold, Mara and Kale remained poised and vigilant. The seconds felt like hours as they awaited the moment when the assassination plot would come to light. Their determination was unwavering, fueled by their commitment to protecting their leaders and safeguarding their kingdom. In the face of the looming disaster, their focus was absolute, their resolve unshakable, and their preparation thorough. The venue, a grand expanse of opulence and festivity, buzzed with the cheerful murmur of guests, their laughter and animated conversations painting a picture of joyous celebration. This vibrant atmosphere, with its elegantly dressed attendees and lavish decorations, stood in stark contrast to the grim reality that Mara and Kale were navigating. The contrast between the public's oblivious enjoyment and the looming threat they faced created an unsettling tension, amplifying the gravity of their mission. What was intended to be a symbol of celebration and diplomatic unity had transformed into a battleground for their desperate struggle. Mara, her senses heightened and her instincts sharp, maneuvered through the crowd with purpose. Her eyes darted from face to face, scanning for any behavior that deviated from the expected. Her heart raced with each passing moment, the stakes of their mission weighing heavily on her. Every smile, every casual gesture among the guests seemed to mock the seriousness of her task. Her focus was unwavering as she sought out any signs of suspicious activity that might betray the presence of the assassins. Meanwhile, Kale was the embodiment of tactical precision, coordinating their efforts with meticulous attention to detail. His role was crucial in ensuring that their plan unfolded smoothly and that they were positioned optimally to intercept any potential threats. He moved with calculated intent, using his strategic mind to analyze the layout and flow of the event. Cale's eyes constantly surveyed the venue, assessing the positioning of security personnel and the potential avenues for an attack, all while ensuring that their own movements remained discreet and effective. Their strategic positioning had been the result of careful planning and extensive reconnaissance. They had identified key areas where the assassination plot was most likely to unfold, and their presence in these critical zones was no accident. The juxtaposition of their tense vigilance against the backdrop of casual festivity highlighted the precarious nature of their mission. Each moment that passed brought them closer to the critical point when the plot was expected to be revealed, making their readiness all the more crucial. As Mara continued her watch, her mind raced through possible scenarios, her training and experience guiding her through the high-stress environment. She had anticipated various contingencies, but the uncertainty of the moment made every second feel like a high-stakes gamble. Her role was not just to identify potential threats but to remain poised and ready to act the moment any danger emerged. The success of their mission hinged on her ability to remain calm under pressure and to react swiftly and effectively. Cale's coordination was the backbone of their operation, ensuring that every movement was synchronized and every position was optimized. His strategic oversight was essential in maintaining the balance between visibility and discretion. The complexity of the venue, with its numerous guests and intricate layout, required a level of precision that Cale handled with expertise. Together, Mara's instincts and Cale's strategy formed a formidable defense against the assassination plot, their combined efforts a testament to their commitment and skill in the face of impending danger. As Mara and Cale made their way through the crowd, they were immediately confronted by a series of distractions that threatened to impede their progress. The grand venue was adorned with elaborate decorations, flowing drapes of silk, glittering chandeliers, and lush floral arrangements that created a labyrinthine effect. The intricate setup, while beautiful, now served as a maze of obstacles that tested their ability to navigate swiftly and effectively. Each decorative element, while intended to enhance the ambience, became a potential hindrance in their race against time. The press of the guests added another layer of complexity to their task. The crowd moved in a fluid, shifting mass, their conversations and laughter forming a constant backdrop of noise. Guests in formal attire meandered through the space, oblivious to the high-stakes mission unfolding around them. Mara and Cale wove through this sea of people with a blend of urgency and precision, their eyes scanning for any sign of disruption or danger amid the festive chaos. Their movements were deliberate, each step calculated to minimize delay and maximize efficiency. Despite the distractions and obstacles, their focus remained unshakable. Mara's keen instincts guided her through the crowd, while Cale's strategic mind kept them on course. Their communication was crucial. They exchanged brief, sharp whispers that conveyed vital information without drawing attention. Their conversations were clipped and purposeful, reflecting the high level of coordination required to execute their plan under such challenging conditions. Each whispered word was a critical component of their orchestration, ensuring that every action was synchronized. Their approach was marked by military efficiency, a testament to their rigorous training and preparation. They had anticipated the potential for such obstacles and had developed strategies to counteract them. Every movement was executed with precision, their awareness heightened by the constant threat of discovery or interference. The urgency of their mission meant that every second counted, and their meticulous planning was evident in their ability to navigate the crowded venue despite the numerous distractions. As they pressed forward, the intensity of their focus was palpable. Mara and Cale operated with a sense of heightened awareness, their minds attuned to the slightest changes in their environment. The elegance and festivity surrounding them seemed almost surreal against the gravity of their task. The juxtaposition of the luxurious setting with the urgent mission at hand created a stark contrast, emphasizing the critical nature of their efforts. Determined not to waste a single moment, Mara and Cale pushed through the labyrinth of obstacles with relentless resolve. Their commitment to the mission was unwavering, their every action driven by the knowledge that the success of their plan depended on their ability to overcome these challenges. The distractions, while formidable, were no match for their combined skill and determination, as they worked tirelessly to ensure that their objectives were met and the assassination plot was thwarted. The first hint of danger emerged from an unexpected source, a commotion at one of the side entrances. The usual hum of conversation and clinking glasses was momentarily overshadowed by the shuffling of footsteps and murmurs of surprise. Mara's sharp eyes, trained to pick up on any irregularity, quickly zeroed in on a figure moving through the crowd with a hurried and deliberate gait. The figure's attempt to blend in was failing miserably, and Mara's instincts immediately flagged the person as a potential threat. Without pausing to consider the implications, Mara signaled to Cale with a subtle gesture, a flick of her hand that conveyed urgency and direction. Cale, ever alert and responsive, sprang into action with practiced efficiency. His eyes darted toward the disturbance, and he began to maneuver through the crowd, pushing past groups of guests and sidestepping obstacles with precision. Their synchronized movements allowed them to close the gap between themselves and the figure, their determination unshaken by the chaos around them. As they navigated the labyrinth of guests and decorations, their focus remained unwavering. The crowd, oblivious to the high-stakes drama unfolding around them, continued to celebrate, their laughter and chatter creating a stark contrast to the seriousness of Mara and Cale's mission. Every step they took was calculated to minimize delay and maximize speed. The figure ahead of them, though trying to maintain a low profile, was growing increasingly conspicuous as they drew nearer. Approaching the side entrance, the figure's actions became more revealing. Mara's gaze, fixed intently on the suspect, noted the subtle bulge under the figure's coat. The concealed weapon was partially visible, its outline unmistakable against the dim lighting of the entrance. The sight of the weapon confirmed Mara's suspicion. The assassination plot was indeed reaching its critical juncture. The urgency of their task escalated as the figure prepared to execute the final stages of their plan. With their target in clear view, Mara and Cale intensified their efforts to intercept the threat. Their approach was a blend of stealth and speed, their every action designed to avoid alerting the figure to their presence. As they closed in, Mara's heart raced, knowing that any misstep could jeopardize the entire mission. The final moments before confrontation were fraught with tension, their determination to prevent the assassination pushing them forward. As they reached the entrance, the figure was momentarily distracted, allowing Mara and Cale to position themselves for a decisive intervention. The crowd's noise and movement provided cover, but the threat remained glaringly apparent. Mara's eyes locked onto the figures, her resolve hardening as she prepared to neutralize the danger. With the concealed weapon now fully in view, the time for action had arrived, and Mara and Cale were ready to confront the imminent threat and protect their leaders from the unfolding catastrophe. Inside the venue, the tension was palpable, reaching a crescendo as the event approached its climax. The grand hall, adorned with elaborate decorations and filled with the hum of excited chatter, seemed a world apart from the unfolding danger. Guests, engrossed in the festivities and oblivious to the peril, continued to celebrate with unrestrained enthusiasm. Amid the vibrant atmosphere, Mara and Cale were focused on their mission, their attention locked onto the figure they had been tracking. The figure, now unmistakably marked as a threat, moved with a deadly intent that was clear in their eyes. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Mara and Cale as they closed in, their hearts racing with urgency. The contrast between the festive ambience and the imminent danger was stark, heightening their resolve. Mara's instincts guided her as she prepared to intercept the assailant, while Kale's tactical mind braced for the confrontation that was about to unfold. With a burst of adrenaline, Mara took action, positioning herself between the assailant and the targeted area. Her presence was sudden and determined, her movements sharp and precise. At the same moment, Kale sprang into the fray, engaging the assailant in a fierce struggle. The confrontation was intense, every second marked by rapid, decisive actions as Kale fought to disarm the attacker. The physical clash was a blur of motion, the stakes clear in the heat of the moment. The struggle was compounded by the chaotic backdrop of the event. The noise of the scuffle was masked by the clamor of the crowd, their cheers and conversations providing a misleading sense of normalcy. Despite the auditory cover, the danger of the situation was undeniable. Each movement in the struggle was critical, the outcome hanging in the balance as Mara and Kale fought to prevent the assassination from coming to fruition. As Mara intercepted the assailant, she managed to contain the immediate threat, her presence and actions pivotal in halting the attacker's progress. Her focus was unwavering, her every move calculated to neutralize the danger while minimizing harm. Kale, meanwhile, wrestled with the assailant, his efforts a testament to his combat skills and determination. The intensity of the struggle underscored the gravity of the situation, their actions driven by the need to protect the lives at stake. The final moments of the confrontation were a chaotic blend of struggle and relief. With the assailant subdued and the immediate threat neutralized, Mara and Kale took a brief moment to assess their situation. The event, though still filled with the clamor of celebration, had been temporarily overshadowed by their decisive intervention. Their swift and effective response had averted the immediate danger, their actions a testament to their resolve and skill in the face of peril. As Mara grappled with the would-be assassin, her mind raced through the implications of their high-stakes confrontation. Each moment spent in this fierce struggle was a moment lost from addressing other potential threats. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on her, as she understood that the success of their mission hinged on every action they took. Her focus was razor-sharp, driven by the need to contain the immediate danger, while also maintaining an awareness of the larger strategic picture. In the midst of the combat, Mara was acutely aware of the importance of coordination with her allies. She had seen how crucial it was for their efforts to align seamlessly, with every team member playing a vital role in the overall mission. As she maneuvered against the assassin, her movements were calculated and precise, aimed not only at neutralizing the threat but also at ensuring that her actions would not inadvertently disrupt the broader strategy. Each decision she made was a step toward achieving their collective goal. The struggle was intense, a physical and mental battle that required all of Mara's combat training and resolve. The assassin's resistance was fierce, and the chaos of their skirmish underscored the gravity of their situation. Mara's heart pounded as she worked to gain the upper hand, her mind simultaneously processing the immediate danger and planning her next moves. Her every action was geared towards regaining control and securing the safety of the event. With a determined effort, Mara executed a final, decisive maneuver. Her years of training and experience converged in this crucial moment, as she disarmed the assassin, the weapons slipping from the attacker's grasp. The immediate threat was neutralized, and the danger that had loomed so large was now under control. The relief of this victory was palpable, but Mara's focus remained unwavering as she quickly assessed the situation and prepared for any further contingencies. The successful disarmament of the assassin was a significant achievement, but Mara knew that their work was far from over. The battle had been won, but the fight against the larger conspiracy was ongoing. As she caught her breath and looked around, she could see the aftermath of the confrontation, a mixture of chaos and relief that marked the end of this particular crisis. Her thoughts were already shifting to the next steps in their mission, aware that their success in this instance had only paved the way for further challenges. Mara's resolve was reinforced by the knowledge that their coordinated efforts had prevented a catastrophe. The immediate danger had been averted, but the complexities of their mission remained. With the assassin subdued and the event's immediate threats addressed, she and her team would now need to focus on analyzing the implications of their actions and preparing for any further developments. Their success in this moment was a testament to their skill and teamwork, but the journey ahead would require continued vigilance and determination. With the assassin subdued and the plot effectively thwarted, Mara and Kale found a brief moment of respite amid the turmoil. Their adrenaline levels were still high, the intensity of the confrontation lingering in their veins. The sense of urgency that had driven them throughout the crisis began to ebb, replaced by a momentary calm. They exchanged a look of shared relief, knowing that they had managed to protect their leaders and avert immediate disaster. However, this victory, hard-earned as it was, marked just a pause in a much larger struggle. As they took stock of the situation, the full scope of the day's events began to settle in. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the aftermath was a complex web of implications. Mara and Kale's minds raced through the potential fallout of their actions, aware that their success had only addressed one facet of a broader conspiracy. The excitement of the moment gave way to a somber realization that their efforts had only scratched the surface of a much deeper and more dangerous plot. The security of the event had been maintained, and the immediate danger had passed, but Mara and Kale knew that this was not the end of their battle. The conspiracy's reach extended further than they had originally anticipated, and the challenges they faced were far from over. The day's events had illuminated the complexity of the threat, revealing that the forces they were up against were more deeply entrenched and sophisticated than they had imagined. As they regrouped, Mara's thoughts were already shifting to the next steps in their mission. The success of this operation had demonstrated their capability and resolve, but it had also highlighted the need for continued vigilance. The battle against the conspiracy was ongoing, and their recent victory provided only a temporary reprieve. They needed to stay alert and prepare for the next phase of their fight, knowing that their adversaries would not be easily deterred. Kale, too, was deep in thought as he processed the day's events. The strategic implications of their success were clear, but so were the continued threats. The confrontation with the assassin had provided valuable insights, but it also underscored the necessity for a more comprehensive understanding of the conspiracy's network. The immediate victory was important, but the broader mission required a strategic overhaul to address the full extent of the threat. Together, Mara and Kale were united in their resolve to continue their fight. Their recent success had solidified their determination and commitment, fueling their drive to uncover the full scope of the conspiracy and safeguard their kingdoms. As they prepared to move forward, they understood that the battle was far from over and that their efforts would need to be as rigorous and strategic as ever to achieve their ultimate goal. As the event drew to a close, Mara and Kale stood side by side, their bodies still tense from the adrenaline-fueled confrontation. The immediate danger had been neutralized, but the weight of their ongoing mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. The guests, oblivious to the peril they had narrowly escaped, continued their festivities with a carefree air that contrasted sharply with the gravity of the situation Mara and Kale had just navigated. The victory, though hard-won, felt like a mere respite in the larger, relentless battle against the conspiracy. Their relief was tempered by the understanding that their fight was far from over. The day's events had only scratched the surface of a deeper and more insidious plot. With the leaders safe and the immediate threat averted, Mara and Kale faced the sobering reality that their struggle was only entering a new phase. The victory had been significant, but it had also highlighted the scale and complexity of the conspiracy they were up against. Their resolve was stronger than ever as they prepared to tackle the next phase of their mission. The success of their efforts had forged a deeper bond between them, reinforcing their commitment to their cause. They knew that the conspiracy's reach extended beyond what they had uncovered, and the road ahead promised to be fraught with danger and uncertainty. Each step forward required careful planning and unwavering determination, qualities they had demonstrated in spades throughout the crisis. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation offered little time for rest. Mara and Cale quickly shifted their focus to the tasks ahead, driven by a sense of urgency that had become second nature. They began to review their strategies, analyze their findings, and prepare for the next moves in their fight. The day's events had provided critical insights, but they also underscored the need for continued vigilance and adaptability. Despite the challenges, Mara and Cale were ready to face whatever came next. The battle against the conspiracy had tested their endurance and resourcefulness, but it had also solidified their resolve. They understood that their commitment to their cause was unwavering, and they were prepared to confront the dangers and uncertainties that lay ahead. Their shared determination fueled their readiness to tackle the next phase of their mission with renewed vigor. As they prepared to leave the venue, Mara and Cale cast one last glance over the scene of their recent struggle. The victory had been significant, but it was clear that the fight was far from over. With their leaders safe and the immediate threat addressed, they turned their attention to the broader battle that awaited them. The road ahead would be challenging, but their unwavering commitment to their cause and their proven resilience provided a firm foundation for the continued struggle against the conspiracy. Chapter 38: The Confrontation. The tense silence that followed the thwarted assassination plot was a stark contrast to the immediate aftermath of the confrontation. The grand venue, once a stage for a potential disaster, was now filled with the subdued murmur of recovery. Guests, still shaken but gradually regaining their composure, began to discuss the events with a mix of relief and confusion. However, Mara, Cale, and Alara remained acutely aware that their battle was far from over. The atmosphere of relief was a temporary reprieve, not the end of their mission. Despite the visible signs of recovery around them, the trio knew that the mastermind behind the plot was still at large. The successful interception of the immediate threat had been a significant achievement, but it did not close the chapter on the conspiracy. The true architect of the plot remained elusive, a fact that weighed heavily on their minds. The absence of the mastermind meant that the full scope of the conspiracy was still hidden, and their victory was incomplete without addressing this crucial aspect. With the immediate danger neutralized, Mara, Cale, and Alara quickly refocused their efforts on the larger task at hand. Their attention shifted to unraveling the remaining pieces of the intricate puzzle that had orchestrated the day's events. The conspiracy's web of deception was complex and deeply entrenched, and the trio understood that exposing the mastermind required more than just addressing surface-level threats. They needed to delve into the layers of deceit and uncover the connections that had facilitated the plot. The sense of urgency was palpable as they regrouped to strategize their next steps. Each member of the trio had a role to play in this new phase of their mission. Mara, with her keen instincts, focused on gathering intelligence and following leads that could point to the mastermind's whereabouts. Cale utilized his strategic mind to analyze patterns and connections, seeking to anticipate the moves of their elusive enemy. Alara, with her magical expertise, worked to strengthen their defenses and uncover any remaining magical threats that might aid the conspirators. As they delved deeper into their investigation, the weight of their mission became more apparent. The complexity of the conspiracy was daunting, and the presence of the mastermind added a layer of danger that demanded meticulous planning and coordination. The trio's commitment to their cause was unwavering, and they approached each new lead and clue with a sense of determined resolve. They knew that only by exposing the mastermind could they ensure that the threat was truly eradicated. In the face of the ongoing challenge, Mara, Cale, and Alara prepared themselves for the long road ahead. Their victory in thwarting the assassination was a significant milestone, but it was not the end of their struggle. With the mastermind still at large, their mission remained incomplete. The trio's focus was set on the task of dismantling the conspiracy and securing the safety of their kingdoms. As they continued their investigation, their resolve was fortified by the knowledge that their battle against the conspiracy was far from over. The trio convened in their safe house, the room illuminated by the flickering glow of lanterns that cast shifting shadows on the walls. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the urgency of their mission as they gathered around a large table strewn with maps, documents, and other intelligence. Their latest challenge was laid out before them. The artifact they had secured had revealed critical information about the mastermind behind the assassination plot. Each piece of data was meticulously examined, the room echoing with the sound of pages turning and pens scratching notes. Elara, seated at the table with a stack of ancient tomes and magical scrolls, had been pivotal in analyzing the artifact. Her deep knowledge of ancient lore and magical artifacts had allowed her to decode the cryptic messages and symbols embedded in the artifact's design. She carefully traced her fingers over a map, her eyes narrowing as she explained the significance of the hidden messages. Her voice was steady but carried an edge of excitement as she revealed that the artifact pointed to a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. The estate in question was notorious within certain circles for its elaborate defenses. It was said to be a labyrinth of security measures, with layers of protection designed to deter even the most determined intruders. Hidden passages and secret rooms were a hallmark of the estate, adding to the challenge of infiltrating it. The trio knew that navigating this complex fortress would require not only their combined skills but also a well-devised strategy to outmaneuver the mastermind's defenses. As Elara outlined the details of the estate's layout, Mara and Kale listened intently, their minds already working through the implications. The complexity of the estate's defenses meant that their approach would need to be both careful and calculated. Mara's tactical mind began formulating a plan to breach the estate's security, while Kale started considering the best methods to deal with the estate's hidden traps and passages. Their goal was clear: to infiltrate the estate, confront the mastermind, and dismantle the conspiracy once and for all. The room was filled with the sound of rapid discussion as they mapped out their strategy. They identified key points of entry, potential threats, and areas where the mastermind might be hiding. Elara continued to provide insights into the magical defenses they might encounter, her expertise proving invaluable in anticipating the challenges they would face. Her knowledge of ancient spells and protective enchantments would be crucial in neutralizing any magical obstacles. With their plan taking shape, the trio prepared for the next phase of their mission. The secure estate represented both a significant challenge and an opportunity to bring their fight against the conspiracy to its climax. They knew that every detail of their strategy would need to be executed with precision. As they finalized their preparations, the gravity of their task was clear. The success of their mission depended on their ability to navigate the estate's defenses, uncover the mastermind's plans, and ultimately secure their kingdom's safety. Mara, Kale, and Elara gathered their gear in the dimly lit safehouse, their faces etched with a blend of resolve and apprehension. The weight of their impending confrontation with the mastermind was heavy on their shoulders. Each knew that this encounter would be a severe test of not just their physical skills and strategic acumen, but also of their endurance and the strength of their teamwork. They reviewed their plan one final time, making sure every detail was meticulously covered, knowing that any misstep could jeopardize their mission. The artifact, which had been pivotal in locating the mastermind's stronghold, was securely packed along with their other essential equipment. Elara's hands were steady as she ensured that the magical components were properly arranged and ready for use. The ancient artifact, now a key piece of their strategy, had provided crucial insights into the estate's defenses. The trio's preparation involved carefully studying the artifact's properties and the secrets it had revealed, which would guide them through the maze of security awaiting them. As the last preparations were completed, Mara took a deep breath and glanced at Cale and Alara, both of whom nodded in silent agreement. The path they were about to take led into the darkness of the night, and the looming estate, shrouded in secrecy and danger, awaited them. The air was crisp and carried the faint rustling of leaves as they moved out of the safe house and into the night. Their movements were deliberate and cautious, their minds focused on the task ahead. Under the cover of darkness, they advanced toward their destination, the estate's silhouette barely discernible against the darkened sky. The only light guiding them was the dim moonlight filtering through the dense canopy of trees that surrounded the estate. The shadows cast by the moon played tricks on their eyes, but they remained vigilant, aware that any lapse in their concentration could be costly. The estate came into view, its towering structure and intricate architecture standing as a formidable barrier to their mission. Mara, leading the way, used her sharp instincts to navigate through the undergrowth, while Cale used his strategic mind to anticipate potential security measures. Alara, positioned slightly behind, kept her senses attuned to any magical wards or traps that might lie in their path. The trio moved with practiced stealth, their every step measured to avoid detection. As they approached the estate's perimeter, the enormity of their task became ever more apparent. They paused to reassess their strategy, the gravity of their mission pressing down on them. Their resolve was unshaken, bolstered by the knowledge they had gained and the artifact that had guided them thus far. With a final, determined glance at one another, they prepared to breach the estate's defenses, ready to confront the mastermind and bring their long and arduous mission to its critical conclusion. As Mara, Cale, and Alara neared the estate, its grandeur emerged as a formidable silhouette against the night sky, casting a long shadow that seemed to stretch across the landscape. The mansion's towering structure loomed like a dark monolith, its windows dark and uninviting, giving it an air of foreboding. The sense of impending conflict hung heavily in the air, a tangible reminder of the gravity of their mission. Each step they took resonated with the weight of their task, their senses heightened and their resolve fortified. The estate's perimeter was an intricate fortress of stone and iron, designed to deter any intruders. The high walls were crowned with sharp iron spikes, and the imposing gates were reinforced with heavy bars and intricate locks. The grounds were patrolled by guards, their movements methodical and vigilant, making every attempt to breach the estate a daunting challenge. Mara, Cale, and Alara took in the scene with practiced eyes, assessing the security measures that stood between them and their goal. Their approach was marked by a careful blend of stealth and strategy. Mara led the way, her movements fluid and silent as she navigated through the shadows. She utilized the cover of the night and the landscape's natural features to avoid detection. Her sharp eyes scanned for any irregularities in the patrol patterns and potential weak points in the estate's defenses. Each step was calculated to minimize noise and avoid drawing attention, reflecting the meticulous planning they had undertaken. Cale followed closely behind, his strategic mind working in overdrive to map out their approach. He coordinated their movements with precision, using hand signals and whispered commands to ensure that they remained synchronized. His focus was on identifying and exploiting any gaps in the security, allowing them to bypass the guards and gain access to the estate without alerting the sentinels. His experience in tactical operations was crucial in navigating the estate's formidable defenses. Alara, with her magical expertise, provided the final layer of their strategy. She carried an assortment of enchanted tools and wards designed to neutralize magical traps and counter any magical surveillance that might be in place. As they approached the estate, she focused on detecting any magical barriers or alarms that could compromise their mission. Her senses were attuned to the subtle fluctuations in magical energy, guiding them safely through the magical defenses that surrounded the estate. Together, the trio approached the estate's formidable gates, their breaths steady and their nerves under control. They moved with a blend of stealth and purpose, each aware of the critical nature of their task. Their preparations had been thorough, and they were ready to confront the mastermind behind the conspiracy. As they neared their objective, their determination was unwavering, fueled by the knowledge that the success of their mission hinged on their ability to overcome the estate's defenses and confront the true architect of the plot. Inside the estate, the atmosphere was a striking contrast of opulence and menace. The rooms were adorned with lavish furnishings, sumptuous velvet drapes, ornate chandeliers that cast a warm, golden glow, and richly embroidered tapestries that depicted scenes of grandeur. Yet, despite the luxurious setting, an undercurrent of menace pervaded the space. The opulent decor seemed to mask a darker reality, a feeling of dread that clung to the walls like a persistent shadow. Mara, Kale, and Alara moved through the mansion with practiced silence, their footsteps barely a whisper against the polished marble floors. Every sound was muted, their breathing steady as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The grandeur of the estate was both a blessing and a curse. The sprawling layout offered numerous hiding spots but also presented a maze of potential dangers. Their heightened senses were on constant alert, aware that any misstep could compromise their mission. As they progressed deeper into the estate, each corner and corridor seemed to hold its own set of potential threats. The shadows cast by the flickering sconces on the walls danced unpredictably, creating an illusion of movement that could easily be mistaken for hidden dangers. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of fabric became a potential signal of lurking guards or concealed traps. The mansion's layout was designed to disorient and intimidate, and the trio was acutely aware of the risks they faced. The opulent furnishings, though stunning, seemed to amplify the tension in the air. Ornate statues and grandiose paintings lined the walls, their expressions frozen in time as if they bore silent witness to the unfolding drama. The excessive wealth and extravagance of the estate stood in stark contrast to the grim task at hand. Each piece of art and every piece of furniture seemed to be a potential hiding spot or an obstacle in their path. Navigating the estate's labyrinthine layout required not just stealth but also keen intuition. The trio used their knowledge of the mansion's design, combined with their skills and instincts, to make calculated decisions at every turn. The mansion's deceptive beauty was a constant reminder of the elaborate deception they were up against, and they had to remain vigilant to avoid falling into any traps or ambushes. Despite their careful and methodical approach, the oppressive atmosphere of the estate weighed heavily on them. The combination of luxury and threat created a palpable tension that made every moment feel fraught with potential danger. As they advanced through the mansion, their resolve remained unshaken. They knew that uncovering the mastermind and completing their mission required not only skill and courage, but also the ability to remain focused amidst the grandeur and the ever-present undercurrent of menace. Their search led them to a grand chamber at the heart of the estate, a room that starkly contrasted with the opulence of the rest of the mansion. This chamber, unlike the lavishly decorated halls, was austere and imposing, its walls constructed from dark, raw stone. The minimalistic decor emphasized the room's foreboding atmosphere, creating a sense of cold detachment. The space was illuminated by a few strategically placed torches, casting flickering shadows that danced menacingly across the walls. At the center of this chilling room stood a figure cloaked in shadow, their presence both commanding and formidable. The figure's posture and demeanor exuded an air of authority and control, a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. The mastermind's silhouette was imposing, their form barely discernible but radiating an undeniable aura of menace. This was the culmination of their efforts, and the confrontation promised to be both intense and pivotal. As Mara, Kale, and Alara approached, the cloak of shadows slowly receded, revealing the mastermind in full. The figure was not just any adversary but a high-ranking political figure, someone with deep-rooted connections and significant influence. The revelation of their identity came as a shock, a jarring twist that added a personal layer of betrayal to the confrontation. This was no mere antagonist. It was someone whose actions had far-reaching implications and who had manipulated the very fabric of their world. The mastermind's cold confidence was palpable, their demeanor reflecting a strategic mind that had orchestrated the conspiracy with meticulous precision. Their gaze was steady and unyielding, conveying a sense of superiority and disdain. The political figure's calm and collected manner was a stark contrast to the tension in the room, further heightening the sense of unease that pervaded the confrontation. The chamber's stark and minimalist design seemed to amplify the gravity of the encounter, its sparse furnishings and dark tones underscoring the seriousness of the moment. The lack of decorative elements was deliberate, intended to focus all attention on the confrontation itself. The room felt like a stage set for this climactic showdown, where every detail contributed to the high stakes of the meeting. As the trio faced the mastermind, the weight of their mission and the personal betrayal they felt came into sharp focus. This was not just a battle of wills but a confrontation with the very heart of the conspiracy. Their resolve was tested, and the confrontation was fraught with the realization that their enemy was deeply embedded within the very structures of power they sought to protect. The room, with its stark decor and commanding presence, served as the final arena for their struggle, where the outcome would determine the future of their kingdoms. The showdown was immediate and intense, a clash that erupted with the suddenness of a storm. The mastermind, fully aware of the imminent danger, engaged with a cold, calculated demeanor that underscored their confidence and control. Their every move was deliberate, a reflection of the deep-rooted plans they had orchestrated with ruthless precision. The room, once a mere backdrop, became the stage for a high-stakes confrontation where every action carried the weight of their elaborate conspiracy. As the mastermind revealed the full extent of their ambition, their dark plans unfolded with chilling clarity. The intricacies of their machinations were exposed, laying bare a scheme that intertwined with the very fabric of the kingdom's power structures. The depth of their ruthlessness was evident in their willingness to manipulate and betray, revealing a level of malevolence that Mara, Kale, and Alara had to confront head-on. Mara, Kale, and Alara responded with unwavering determination, their combined skills and resolve pushing them to their limits. Each of them brought their unique abilities to the fight, creating a formidable force against their adversary. The confrontation was a test of endurance and adaptability, as they navigated through the mastermind's strategic maneuvers and countered with their own tactics. The battle was not solely one of physical strength, it was a complex interplay of strategy and wits. Mara, Kale, and Alara had to outmaneuver their opponent, anticipating moves and reacting with precision. Their strategy involved not just direct combat but also the careful exploitation of any weaknesses they could identify in the mastermind's defenses. This added layer of complexity made the encounter as much a battle of minds as of physical prowess. Every movement in the room was charged with tension, each action and reaction critical to the outcome. The mastermind's calculated efforts to maintain control were met with the trio's relentless drive to overcome. The confrontation's intensity was matched by the high stakes, as the resolution of this battle would determine the fate of their mission and the stability of their kingdoms. As the fight raged on, the room itself seemed to close in, reflecting the pressure and urgency of the moment. The stark, minimalist decor took on a menacing quality, emphasizing the gravity of the showdown. The outcome of this confrontation was poised to shift the balance, and the determination of Mara, Kale, and Alara was the final counter to the mastermind's dark ambition. Their relentless effort and strategic acumen would ultimately decide the fate of their mission and the future of their world. In the heat of the confrontation, the outcome teetered on a knife edge. The struggle was fierce and unforgiving, with each side deploying every resource and tactic at their disposal. The room was a battlefield of shifting allegiances and shifting strategies, where every maneuver and countermaneuver added to the tension. The mastermind's calculated assaults were met with equal determination from Mara, Kale, and Alara, as they fought to shift the balance in their favor. As the clash reached its peak, the combined efforts of Mara, Kale, and Alara became increasingly critical. Mara's unyielding resolve, forged through countless trials, fueled her relentless pursuit of victory. Her actions were driven by an unwavering commitment to protecting her leaders and thwarting the mastermind's schemes. Kale's strategic acumen, honed through meticulous planning and quick thinking, guided their efforts with precision. His ability to anticipate the mastermind's moves and adapt their strategy in real time proved invaluable. Alara's deep knowledge of ancient lore and magical artifacts added a crucial layer to their efforts. Her understanding of the arcane and her quick use of magical defenses and countermeasures turned the tide in their favor. Her expertise not only neutralized the mastermind's attempts to use magic against them but also provided insights into the mastermind's vulnerabilities. The synergy of their individual strengths created a formidable force against their adversary. The intensity of the confrontation reached its zenith as the trio's combined skills began to overwhelm the mastermind. Every action was a calculated risk, each decision made under immense pressure. The mastermind's resistance grew fiercer, but the trio's relentless drive and coordinated efforts steadily eroded their opponent's defenses. The struggle was a test of endurance, strategy, and unity, with both sides pushing their limits. With a final, decisive move, Mara, Kale, and Alara managed to shift the balance decisively. The culmination of their efforts came in a moment of clarity and precision, as they executed a plan that had been meticulously crafted through their collaboration. The mastermind, previously so confident in their machinations, was finally overpowered. Their capture marked the end of the immediate threat, securing a hard-fought victory for the trio. As the confrontation concluded, the room fell into a tense silence. The immediate danger was subdued, but the impact of the battle lingered. Mara, Kale, and Alara took a moment to assess the aftermath, their exhaustion mingling with a sense of achievement. The victory was hard-won, a testament to their determination and teamwork, and marked a pivotal moment in their ongoing struggle against the forces threatening their world. The victory was bittersweet, a complex mix of relief and lingering concern. The capture of the mastermind, while a monumental achievement, came with a weight of personal and political ramifications. The immediate danger was neutralized, but the broader implications of the mastermind's schemes and the unrest they had stirred were far from resolved. The trio understood that their triumph was not an end but a significant milestone in a much larger struggle. Mara, Kale, and Alara stood together in the aftermath of the confrontation, their exhaustion palpable but their spirits buoyed by their success. The Grand Chamber, once a stage for their intense battle, now felt like a quiet testament to their efforts. They exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the trials they had faced and the strength they had drawn from each other. Their unity in the face of danger had been a crucial factor in their success. The capture of the mastermind had provided a critical blow to the conspiracy, but it also revealed the depth of the challenges still ahead. The political landscape was shaken, and the repercussions of their actions would resonate throughout their kingdoms. The victory, though significant, was tempered by the realization that the conspiracy's web extended further than they had initially known. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and continued threats. Despite the relief of their immediate success, the trio remained acutely aware of the work that lay ahead. Their confrontation with the mastermind had tested their limits, both individually and as a team. The personal sacrifices and the strategic maneuvers required to secure their victory had only reaffirmed their commitment to their cause. They were more determined than ever to see their mission through to its ultimate resolution. The trials they had faced together had solidified their bond and honed their abilities. The intense confrontation had been a crucible, forging a deeper sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. As they regrouped and prepared for the next chapter in their journey, their resolve was unwavering. The challenges ahead were daunting, but their shared experience and their proven resilience provided a strong foundation for whatever came next. With the capture of the mastermind, the stage was set for the next phase of their mission. The victory had paved the way for new strategies and alliances, but also underscored the ongoing nature of their struggle. Mara, Kale, and Alara knew that their journey was far from over. As they faced the future, their commitment to unraveling the conspiracy and safeguarding their kingdoms remained as steadfast as ever. Chapter 39: A Narrow Escape. The echoes of their victory reverberated through the grand chamber, the once menacing room now starkly illuminated by their accomplishment. Mara, Kale, and Alara stood amidst the aftermath of their fierce confrontation, their breaths coming in heavy, relieved gasps. The mastermind, now subdued, lay in the center of the room, a symbol of their hard-fought triumph. Yet, even as they relished the moment, an unsettling feeling began to creep over them, a gnawing sense that their victory might be fleeting. The estate, which had seemed imposing and aloof, now felt different. An oppressive air hung heavily around them, as though the very walls of the mansion were closing in, reacting to the disturbance they had caused. The grandeur of the surroundings, once a backdrop for their struggle, now seemed to pulse with an ominous energy. Each creak and groan of the old structure seemed to carry a whisper of impending danger. Mara's instincts, honed by countless battles and betrayals, were on high alert. She could sense that something was amiss beyond the immediate victory. The usual quiet of the estate had been replaced by an uneasy silence, broken only by the distant sounds of machinery and alarms. The subtle changes in the atmosphere were a clear indication that the estate's defenses had been triggered, and the stakes had shifted once again. As their uneasy feelings solidified into dread, the confirmation came in the form of a sharp, piercing alarm. The sound cut through the silence with a jarring clarity, signaling that the estate was now on high alert. The once stately and calm environment was now engulfed in a cacophony of blaring sirens and flashing lights. The trio's sense of triumph quickly turned to urgency as they realized the magnitude of the new threat they faced. The estate's elaborate alarm system had been triggered, its defenses awakening to the intrusion. The walls, which had seemed so solid and impenetrable, now seemed to pulsate with hidden mechanisms coming to life. The alarms, a stark contrast to the earlier quiet, created a disorienting atmosphere. Mara, Kale, and Alara knew that their time was running short and that they needed to act quickly to avoid being overwhelmed by the estate's security measures. Their initial victory had now given way to a new and pressing challenge. The trio immediately began to strategize, their minds racing to adapt to the rapidly changing circumstances. They needed to navigate the estate's newly activated defenses while ensuring the mastermind remained secured. Each second was precious, and their coordination would be crucial in managing the chaos unfolding around them. As they prepared to face this new danger, their resolve was tested once again. Mara's eyes flicked between Kale and Alara, her usually composed demeanor giving way to a look of stark urgency. The realization that their moment of triumph had triggered an escalating danger weighed heavily on her. "We need to move now," she commanded, her voice laced with the tension of their predicament. The mastermind's capture had inadvertently activated a series of contingencies within the estate, each one designed to prevent escape and secure the premises from unwanted guests. The air was thick with the gravity of their situation, and there was no time to waste. The grandeur of the mansion, which had once seemed an emblem of their victory, was now transforming into a perilous labyrinth. The once opulent corridors, lined with lavish decorations and intricate tapestries, had taken on a more sinister aspect. The elegance of the surroundings had become a facade hiding the estate's true nature, a network of concealed traps and security measures. The elaborate design that once spoke of wealth and sophistication now served as a treacherous maze, each turn potentially leading to new dangers. As Mara, Kale, and Alara began their hurried retreat, the corridors that had seemed so inviting now posed significant threats. The estate's once grand architecture was now a series of twisting hallways and hidden passages, each corner fraught with potential hazards. The alarms had activated a series of defensive mechanisms, and the mansion's once grand features had become instruments of entrapment. Every step forward was fraught with the risk of encountering newly revealed traps or security features. The urgency of their situation was underscored by the increasingly hostile environment. The alarms blared incessantly, their harsh tones reverberating through the marble halls and amplifying the sense of urgency. Lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. The clamor of the alarms and the blinding lights created a chaotic atmosphere, heightening their stress as they navigated through the now hostile estate. Kale's sharp strategic mind was in overdrive, calculating their best course of action amidst the rising panic. He relayed swift, precise instructions to Mara and Alara, his focus on avoiding the traps and minimizing their exposure to danger. Each decision was critical as they navigated through the treacherous corridors, the security system seemingly adapting to their movements with each passing moment. His tactical awareness was their greatest asset in this perilous situation. Alara, ever vigilant, used her knowledge of ancient defenses and magical wards to identify and mitigate some of the hidden dangers. Her deep understanding of the mansion's layout, combined with her magical expertise, allowed her to sense and counteract some of the traps designed to ensnare intruders. As she moved with purpose, she also kept an eye out for any magical interference or additional hazards that might have been triggered by their intrusion. The trio's progress was slow and fraught with tension, each corridor and passage presenting new challenges. The initial shock of the estate's transformation had given way to a methodical, if frantic, navigation of its dangers. Their path was constantly shifting, and the estate's once elegant features now seemed intent on hindering their escape. The mansion was no longer a symbol of success, but a prison threatening to ensnare them with its hidden perils. Mara, driven by both determination and the pressure of their precarious situation, led the way with an unwavering resolve. Her keen instincts and quick thinking were crucial as they maneuvered through the estate's evolving defenses. The danger they faced was palpable, and her focus remained razor-sharp as she guided her companions through the labyrinthine corridors, determined to find a way out before the estate could claim them as its captives. The sense of urgency intensified with each passing moment. As they pressed on, the estate's defenses seemed to escalate in complexity and hostility. The once simple task of escaping had become a desperate race against time, with every turn revealing new threats. Despite their exhaustion and the relentless pressure, Mara, Kale, and Alara remained resolute, driven by the need to escape the estate and ensure that their mission and their lives were not lost to the mansion's cruel machinations. The trio sprang into action, their adrenaline surging as they plunged into the estate's convoluted passages. The once grand corridors, now transformed into a maze of peril, presented a relentless series of challenges. Each step forward was met with escalating security measures, their initial subtlety giving way to overt and aggressive defenses. The luxurious surroundings, once a testament to wealth and power, now seemed like a mere veneer masking the mansion's true, malevolent nature. As Mara, Kale, and Alara navigated the estate's labyrinth, the walls themselves seemed to conspire against them. The grandeur of the mansion became an oppressive weight, its opulence a stark contrast to the danger they now faced. The grandeur of their surroundings was punctuated by the alarming noise of mechanisms activating around them. Every hallway they entered seemed to constrict, with the architecture shifting to trap and ensnare them. The mansion's previously inviting aura had transformed into a claustrophobic nightmare. The mansion's defenses were anything but passive. Sudden walls began dropping from the ceilings with ominous clanks, blocking their paths and forcing them to find alternative routes. These barriers were swiftly followed by hidden dart traps, their lethal projectiles zipping through the air with deadly precision. Each new hazard emerged with terrifying suddenness, their surprise attacks testing the trio's reflexes and fortitude. The once grand hallways, lined with opulent tapestries, were now a battleground of danger and deception. Pressure plates embedded in the floors were another deadly obstacle. Every step had to be calculated and cautious, as these plates triggered a series of deadly mechanisms designed to incapacitate or eliminate intruders. The floor beneath them seemed to shift and pulse with malicious intent, each step a potential risk of activating a trap. The trio's focus was razor-sharp, their every movement synchronized as they worked to avoid the myriad dangers that lurked beneath the estate's polished surface. The estate's defenses seemed to escalate in complexity with every passing moment. The opulent facade of the mansion, once a symbol of its owner's prestige, had become a facade concealing a labyrinth of treacherous traps. The sense of impending doom grew with each twist and turn of their path. The luxurious materials that adorned the walls and floors now felt like mocking reminders of the danger they were in, their elegance overshadowed by the perils lurking within the estate. Despite the escalating dangers, Mara, Kale, and Alara's determination never wavered. Their movements were a blend of urgency and precision, driven by the need to escape and survive. Mara's sharp instincts guided them through the shifting maze, while Kale's strategic acumen helped them anticipate and navigate the traps. Alara's keen awareness of the estate's magical defenses provided crucial insights, allowing them to avoid some of the most insidious threats. Each successful avoidance of a trap was met with a momentary sense of relief, quickly overshadowed by the next imminent danger. The trio's progress was a relentless push against time, their escape a race against the estate's increasingly hostile defenses. The opulence of their surroundings seemed to mock their efforts, its once grand features now serving as a grim reminder of their perilous situation. As they pressed on, their fatigue was palpable, but their resolve remained unshaken. The mansion, with its seemingly endless array of dangers, tested their limits at every turn. Their journey through the estate was marked by a series of narrow escapes and close calls, each one heightening the sense of urgency and danger. The once stately mansion had become a crucible of trial and survival. The relentless assault of traps and defenses only fueled their determination to escape. With every hazard they circumvented, the stakes grew higher, and their drive to overcome the estate's challenges intensified. The labyrinthine passages that had once seemed so grand now represented a gauntlet they had to endure, their goal clear: to survive the mansion's perilous defenses and emerge victorious. Despite their best efforts to navigate the treacherous corridors, their escape route was abruptly compromised. A sudden cacophony of noise erupted around them, a discordant mix of blaring alarms and the hurried shouts of guards. The once opulent mansion, now a labyrinth of danger, seemed to come alive with a renewed sense of urgency, as if the walls themselves were conspiring to trap them within. The realization hit hard: they were running out of time, and the window for a clean escape was rapidly closing. Kale, always the sharp strategist, was quick to assess their dire situation. The relentless approach of the estate's guards meant they couldn't afford to waste another second. His mind raced through possible scenarios, weighing risks and outcomes with the speed and precision that had served him well in countless battles. Despite the tension crackling in the air, he remained outwardly calm, his focus unyielding as he began to formulate a plan that might just give them the edge they needed to survive. "We'll need to split up," Cale instructed, his voice steady and authoritative. He knew that dividing their forces was risky, but it was their best chance to outmaneuver the guards. By scattering, they could confuse and delay their pursuers, buying precious time to regroup and escape. His eyes met Mara's and Ilara's, the gravity of their situation reflected in the intensity of his gaze. There was no room for hesitation now. Every second counted, and they had to act swiftly and decisively. The plan was simple yet fraught with peril. They would each take a different path through the mansion, creating diversions that would lead the guards away from their true escape route. "Stay in constant contact," Cale added, his tone firm. The need for communication was paramount. They had to ensure that no one was left behind and that their movements were coordinated despite the separation. The thought of losing one another in the labyrinthine estate was a fear they couldn't afford to entertain. Mara nodded in agreement, her jaw set with determination. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her, but she refused to let it shake her resolve. Splitting up was a gamble, but she trusted Cale's judgment implicitly. Her mind raced as she mentally mapped out her route, preparing herself for the challenges that lay ahead. The thought of being alone in the mansion, with danger lurking around every corner, sent a shiver down her spine, but she pushed it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Ilara, though apprehensive, also understood the necessity of their plan. Her expertise in ancient lore and magical defenses would be crucial in navigating the estate's more arcane threats. She quickly calculated the safest path she could take, one that would lead her through the mansion's less traveled passages while still allowing her to create enough of a distraction to draw the guards away from the others. The stakes were higher than ever, but Ilara's resolve was unshakable. She would do whatever it took to ensure their mission's success. With a final nod of agreement, the trio moved to execute Cale's plan. They exchanged one last glance, a silent promise to meet again at the designated rendezvous point. The west exit became their shared goal, the beacon that would guide them through the perilous journey ahead. Each of them knew that the path they were about to take would be fraught with danger, but they also knew that failure was not an option. The mission was too important, and the cost of being caught was too high. As they split up, the mansion seemed to close in around them even further. The once grandiose halls now felt suffocating, each step echoing ominously in the silence between the alarms. The sounds of the guards grew louder, the thud of boots and the clatter of weapons sending waves of tension through the air. Cale, Mara, and Ilara each navigated their chosen paths with a mixture of caution and urgency, their hearts pounding as they sought to outmaneuver their pursuers. The plan was in motion, but the danger was far from over. As each of them faced their own unique challenges within the mansion's labyrinth, the knowledge that their fates were intertwined lent them strength. The hope of reunion at the west exit kept them moving forward, even as the odds stacked against them. Their bond, forged through countless trials, would be their greatest weapon as they fought to escape the clutches of the enemy and survive the deadly game they had been forced to play. Mara and Ilara darted down one of the many maze-like corridors of the mansion, their footsteps echoing sharply against the cold stone walls. The dimly lit passageways twisted and turned, a disorienting labyrinth designed to confuse intruders, but the two women moved with purpose. Every step they took was calculated, every turn deliberate, as they raced against time and the mounting danger. The urgency of their escape hung heavy in the air, a palpable force driving them forward with relentless speed. Their hearts pounded in unison, each beat a reminder of the stakes they faced. The artifact, clutched tightly in Mara's hand, was a constant presence, its weight both physical and symbolic. It represented their victory over the mastermind and the potential key to unraveling the broader conspiracy. Yet, it also felt like a burden, a target painted on their backs that made their flight even more perilous. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, every sound a possible prelude to an attack. But Mara and Elara were determined to see their mission through to the end. As they wove through the mansion's corridors, their agility and cunning were put to the test. The mansion's defenses were no longer subtle. They had escalated into a full-scale assault on anyone attempting to escape. Hidden traps lay in wait at every turn, triggered by the slightest misstep. The two women moved with practiced precision, dodging swinging blades, leaping over tripwires, and narrowly avoiding sudden pits that opened beneath their feet. Each obstacle was a reminder of how carefully the mastermind had prepared to defend this stronghold. Patrols of guards crisscrossed their path, their numbers multiplying as the alarm spread throughout the estate. Mara and Elara quickly adapted to the new threats, using their wits to outmaneuver the guards. They ducked into alcoves just in time to avoid detection, pressed themselves against walls to blend into the shadows, and timed their movements with the precision of seasoned operatives. The close calls were many, each one a near brush with disaster, but they remained undeterred. Their bond, forged in the fires of countless battles, gave them the strength to push forward. With each narrow escape, their adrenaline surged, heightening their senses and sharpening their resolve. They could feel the danger pressing in on them, the walls of the mansion seeming to close in with every passing moment. Yet, in the face of this relentless pressure, they found a rhythm, a synchrony in their movements that carried them through the worst of the dangers. The artifact, despite its burden, became a symbol of their shared determination, a reminder of why they fought and why they could not afford to fail. The tension between them was palpable, a shared understanding that this might be their last chance to escape with their lives and their mission intact. Mara's mind raced with contingency plans, while Elara's keen senses remained alert to the nuances of their surroundings. They communicated in brief, whispered exchanges, their voices steady despite the chaos around them. Each decision had to be made in an instant, with no margin for error. There was no room for hesitation, only action. As they rounded a corner, the corridor opened up into a larger hall, its high ceilings and ornate decorations a stark contrast to the claustrophobic passages they had just navigated. But there was no time to admire the architecture. This space was just as dangerous as the rest of the mansion. A patrol of guards blocked their path, and for a moment, it seemed like their escape would be cut short. But Mara and Elara acted without hesitation, using a combination of distraction and stealth to slip past the guards, their movements a blur of coordinated action. Their escape was a delicate dance with danger, each step bringing them closer to freedom, but also deeper into the heart of the mansion's defenses. The closer they got to the exit, the more intense the resistance became. It was as if the mansion itself was alive, reacting to their every move, throwing obstacles in their path to prevent their escape. But Mara and Elara's resolve only grew stronger with each challenge they overcame. They knew that the artifact they carried was too important to lose, and they were willing to risk everything to ensure its safety. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of running, dodging, and fighting, they spotted a glimmer of hope, a faint light ahead that marked the way out. Their hearts leaped with renewed energy, knowing that they were almost there. But the final stretch would be the hardest. The mansion's last line of defense stood between them and freedom, a gauntlet of traps and guards that would test their skills and resolve to the limit. But Mara and Elara were ready. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, determined to emerge victorious and carry their mission to its ultimate conclusion. Meanwhile, Cale found himself navigating a treacherous path of his own. The mansion's hidden passages, long and winding, were both a blessing and a curse. They offered him a way to stay ahead of the pursuing guards, but they also presented new challenges at every turn. With each step, Cale had to rely on his intimate knowledge of the estate's layout, a mental map that he had meticulously studied before the mission. The tension in the air was almost suffocating, but Cale's determination to protect his companions kept him moving forward. His hands worked quickly and efficiently as he set traps in the narrow corridors, each one designed to slow down or mislead their enemies. The dark, oppressive atmosphere of the mansion seemed to close in around him, but Cale remained focused on his task. He knew that every second counted, and that the traps he laid could mean the difference between success and failure for Mara and Alara. The faint sound of footsteps and distant shouts echoed through the passages, a constant reminder of the danger that stalked him, but Cale's resolve was unshaken. As he moved deeper into the labyrinth of hidden passages, Cale's thoughts were not only on his own survival but on ensuring that Mara and Alara had a clear path to their rendezvous point. He knew that their success depended on coordination and timing, and he was determined to play his part. Each trap he set was placed with precision, designed to confuse and delay the guards while allowing his friends a safer route. The walls of the passage seemed to close in around him, the darkness pressing in on all sides, but Cale's mind was sharp, his actions deliberate. The oppressive atmosphere of the mansion weighed heavily on him, the air thick with a sense of impending danger. The walls, once grand and imposing, now felt like they were conspiring against him, their shadows hiding unseen threats. But Cale's experience and training allowed him to move through the darkness with confidence. His every movement was calculated, every decision made with the knowledge that failure was not an option. He could feel the cold stone under his fingers as he set another trap, his senses attuned to the slightest sound or movement around him. As he reached a particularly narrow and winding section of the passage, Cale paused for a moment to assess his surroundings. The sounds of the guards grew louder, closer, but he remained calm. This section of the mansion was unfamiliar territory even for him, but he quickly formulated a plan. He used the natural twists and turns of the passage to his advantage, creating a false trail that would lead the guards away from the real exit. His heart raced as he worked, but his hands remained steady, his mind clear. Cale knew that the dark, twisting corridors of the mansion were as much a psychological challenge as a physical one. The oppressive silence was broken only by the occasional creak of the old stone and the distant echoes of pursuit. It was easy to lose one's sense of direction in such an environment, but Cale's training allowed him to stay oriented. He moved with purpose, his steps confident even in the face of the unknown. Every decision he made was driven by his commitment to the mission and his determination to protect Mara and Alara. The further he went, the more the mansion seemed to fight back. Cale could feel the weight of the building's history, its secrets pressing down on him as if the very walls held the memories of all who had come before. But Cale pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. His mind was a whirlwind of strategies and contingencies, his body moving almost on instinct as he continued to set traps and create diversions. The mansion's oppressive atmosphere was no match for his resolve. Despite the ever-present danger, Cale found a sense of calm in his work. Each trap he set, each move he made, was a step closer to ensuring the safety of his friends. The narrow passages offered little room for error, but Cale's focus never wavered. He knew that his efforts were crucial to the success of their mission, and that knowledge gave him the strength to keep going. The tension in the air was almost tangible, but Cale remained unshaken, his mind focused on the goal ahead. Finally, as he approached the designated rendezvous point, Cale allowed himself a brief moment of relief. He had done everything he could to secure their escape, and now it was up to Mara and Alara to reach him. The mansion's dark corridors had tested him in ways he had not anticipated, but he had emerged stronger, his resolve hardened. As he waited in the shadows, his senses alert to any sign of movement, Cale knew that the true challenge was still ahead. But he was ready, his focus unyielding, his determination unwavering. As the trio reconvened at the west exit, their faces were etched with the strain of the harrowing escape. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, each one a testament to the intensity of the ordeal they had just endured. The air around them was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the cool night breeze that greeted them as they emerged from the mansion's oppressive confines. Despite the exhaustion that weighed heavily on their bodies, their minds remained sharply focused on the task at hand. They knew that their escape was far from guaranteed, and every second counted. The estate's perimeter, once a shadowy boundary, was now swarming with guards. The alarms had done their work, summoning every available soldier to block their path. The sight of the guards, armed and ready, sent a jolt of urgency through the trio. The window of escape was closing rapidly, and the odds were stacked against them. Mara, Cale, and Alara exchanged a brief, determined glance, a silent agreement that they would fight their way out no matter the cost. There was no time for hesitation, only action. As they advanced towards the final line of defenses, the trio moved with a precision born of countless battles fought together. Each movement was synchronized despite the chaos that swirled around them. Mara's swift strikes cleared a path through the guards, her movements a blur of lethal efficiency. Alara, with her keen eyes and quick reflexes, identified the weak points in their enemy's formation, guiding their attacks with whispered instructions. Cale, ever the strategist, anticipated the guards' maneuvers, countering their every move with calculated precision. The guards, though numerous and well-trained, were unprepared for the sheer determination and skill of their adversaries. The trio's coordinated efforts created a wave of confusion and panic among the defenders, who struggled to contain the onslaught. The sounds of clashing steel and shouted orders filled the air, a cacophony that only served to heighten the tension. But Mara, Cale, and Alara remained focused, their minds attuned to the rhythm of battle. Every move was deliberate, every strike aimed to disable rather than kill, ensuring that they could push through without unnecessary bloodshed. Despite the chaos, the trio's path was not without obstacles. The estate's final line of defense was formidable, a barrier designed to stop any intruder dead in their tracks. But the trio was relentless, their determination fueling their every action. They fought with a fierce intensity, each one drawing on reserves of strength they didn't know they had. The weight of the artifact they carried, a symbol of their mission's importance, added urgency to their efforts. Failure was not an option, and they would not allow themselves to be captured or defeated. As they neared the final obstacle, a massive wrought iron gate that marked the boundary between the estate and the outside world, their resolve only hardened. The gate was heavily guarded, and the trio knew that breaking through would require every ounce of their remaining strength. With a final burst of energy, they launched their assault. Mara led the charge, her powerful strikes shattering the guards' defenses. Cale and Alara followed close behind, their coordinated attacks overwhelming the remaining opposition. The gate loomed before them, a final, daunting challenge. But the trio was undeterred. Together, they pushed against the heavy iron, their combined strength gradually forcing it open. The effort was immense, their muscles straining with the exertion, but they refused to back down. The night air beyond the gate was tantalizingly close, a promise of freedom that spurred them on. Inch by inch, the gate yielded to their efforts, until at last, with one final, desperate push, it swung open. As they stumbled through the gate and emerged into the night air, a wave of relief washed over them. The cool breeze was a welcome contrast to the heat and tension of the battle they had just fought. Their hearts pounded with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, the reality of their escape beginning to sink in. For a moment, they allowed themselves to breathe, to acknowledge the monumental effort it had taken to reach this point. But they knew that their journey was far from over. With the estate behind them, the trio didn't stop to rest. The guards would not give up the chase easily, and they needed to put as much distance between themselves and the mansion as possible. Their victory was hard-won, but it was only the first step in a much larger battle. As they disappeared into the night, their minds were already focused on the next phase of their mission. The artifact they carried was safe, but the true danger still lay ahead. Together, they would face whatever challenges awaited them, their bonds stronger than ever after the trials they had endured. They didn't stop until they were well away from the estate, their footsteps finally slowing as the distant silhouette of the mansion faded into the night. The dark forest that now surrounded them provided a temporary sanctuary, a place where they could catch their breath and regroup. The adrenaline that had fueled their escape began to ebb, replaced by the cold reality of their situation. Their escape was secured, but the sense of victory that might have followed was conspicuously absent. The Mastermind's capture had been a crucial step, but the threat they faced was far from neutralized. Mara, Kale, and Alara knew that they were only at the beginning of a much larger battle. As they came to a halt, the trio exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. The shadows of the forest cast long, eerie shapes around them, a reminder that they were still deep within enemy territory. Despite their success in escaping the estate, the looming presence of the Mastermind's network weighed heavily on their minds. They were keenly aware that the conspiracy they were fighting against was not limited to the walls of the mansion. The Mastermind's influence extended far beyond, a web of power and deceit that would not be easily dismantled. Mara was the first to speak, her voice low and measured, still tinged with the urgency that had driven them through the night. "We may have escaped, but the Mastermind's network is still out there," she said, her eyes scanning the darkened forest as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows at any moment. The relief of having survived the night was tempered by the knowledge that their victory was incomplete. The capture of the Mastermind was a significant blow, but the true challenge lay in dismantling the vast network that had allowed the conspiracy to flourish. Kale, ever the strategist, nodded in agreement. "We've dealt with the immediate threat, but we can't let our guard down," he replied, his voice steady despite the weariness that had begun to settle into his bones. He knew that their fight was far from over. The Mastermind's network would be on high alert now, their forces likely regrouping and preparing for a counterattack. The danger was not behind them but ahead, and they would need to stay vigilant if they were to succeed in their mission. Alara, her senses still sharp despite the grueling ordeal they had just endured, took a moment to assess their surroundings. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was a deceptive calm, one that belied the perilous situation they were in. "We need to move quickly and quietly," she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't stay here for long. They'll be searching for us, and it won't take them long to figure out where we've gone." The urgency in her voice was a stark reminder that their escape was only temporary. The Mastermind's network would stop at nothing to track them down. The trio took a moment to catch their breath, their bodies still tense from the narrow escape. The cold night air was a welcome contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of the mansion, but it did little to ease the weight of the task ahead. They had thwarted the immediate threat, but the conspiracy they were fighting was like a hydra. Cut off one head, and another would emerge. The narrow escape had reinforced their resolve, but it had also underscored the magnitude of the danger that still loomed. They could not afford to let their guard down for even a moment. As they regrouped, Kale began to outline their next steps. His mind was already working through the details of their plan, considering the resources they had at their disposal and the challenges they would face in the coming days. "We need to find a safe place to rest and plan our next move," he said, his voice laced with determination. "The network is vast, but it's not invulnerable. We've already struck a major blow by capturing the Mastermind, and we need to keep up the pressure. We can't give them time to recover. Mara and Elara listened intently, their expressions mirroring the gravity of the situation. They both knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, but they were committed to seeing their mission through to the end. The weight of their responsibility pressed heavily upon them, but it was a burden they were willing to bear. They had come too far to turn back now, and the stakes were too high to falter. The safety of their kingdoms depended on their success, and they would do whatever it took to dismantle the conspiracy that threatened them. The trio began to move again, their pace slower but no less purposeful. The forest around them seemed to close in, the darkness growing thicker as they ventured deeper into the unknown. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they faced them with unyielding resolve. The fight was far from over, but they were prepared to confront whatever dangers lay ahead. Their bond, forged in the crucible of battle, would see them through the trials to come. As they disappeared into the depths of the forest, the realization of the magnitude of their mission settled over them like a heavy shroud. They had escaped the estate, but the true test lay in the days and weeks to come. The Mastermind's network was still a formidable force, and the battle to bring it down would be long and arduous. But Mara, Kale, and Elara were united in their cause, and they would not rest until the threat was eradicated. Their victory was incomplete, but their determination was unwavering, and they would see their mission through to the end, no matter the cost. Chapter 40: The Aftermath. The morning sun broke over the horizon, its rays cutting through the lingering darkness to cast an unforgiving light on the scene of the previous night's tumultuous events. As the golden light spread, it illuminated the full extent of the chaos that had unraveled, exposing the raw aftermath of the confrontation. The opulence of the estate, once a symbol of power and stability, now lay marred by the violence that had taken place within its walls. The grand chamber where the final showdown had occurred was now eerily quiet, the silence a stark contrast to the frenetic energy that had filled the air just hours before. For Mara, Kale, and Elara, the dawn brought little comfort. Exhausted and bruised, both in body and spirit, they stepped out of the shadows, their escape into the light a reluctant emergence into a world forever changed by the night's events. Their journey from the estate had been fraught with tension, each step taken with the knowledge that their mission, though partially successful, had left a precarious balance hanging over the realms they sought to protect. The event, which had been intended as a cornerstone of diplomatic relations, had instead become a battleground where trust was shattered and alliances were tested. The confrontation with the Mastermind had revealed deep fissures in the political landscape, and now, in the harsh light of day, those cracks were more visible than ever. The stability of the kingdoms was no longer a given, it was a fragile construct that could crumble under the weight of the night's revelations. As the trio surveyed the landscape around them, the weight of the consequences began to settle in. The battle they had fought was not just a personal victory but one with far-reaching implications. The Mastermind's capture had exposed the extent of the conspiracy, yet it also unveiled the vulnerability of the kingdom's political structures. Leaders who had once been seen as pillars of strength were now embroiled in a scandal that threatened to unravel years of diplomatic efforts. The delicate balance of power was teetering, and the potential for social and political instability loomed large on the horizon. Mara, with her keen sense of duty, felt the burden of their actions more acutely than ever. She understood that the night's events had set off a chain reaction that would not be easily contained. The capture of the Mastermind had been a critical victory, but it had also left both kingdoms exposed to the dangerous undercurrents that had been stirred. As she looked at Kale and Elara, she could see the same understanding mirrored in their eyes. They were no longer just warriors fighting in the shadows, they were now key players in a much larger and more perilous game. The stability of the realms rested on their shoulders, and the decisions they made in the coming days would be crucial in determining the future. Kale, ever the strategist, was already considering the next steps. The political fallout from the night's events was inevitable, but how they navigated the aftermath would determine the extent of the damage. He knew that they could not afford to be complacent. The mastermind's network was still active, and their enemies would not hesitate to exploit the chaos to further their own agendas. The trio's victory had bought them some time, but the road ahead was treacherous, with every move requiring careful calculation. The future of the kingdoms depended on their ability to outmaneuver the forces that sought to destabilize them. Elara, with her deep knowledge of the ancient and arcane, felt a sense of foreboding. The magic that had been wielded during the confrontation was powerful, and its effects would reverberate beyond the immediate consequences. The artifact they had secured was a symbol of the battle they had won, but it was also a reminder of the dark forces at play. The political upheaval was only one aspect of the danger they faced. There were deeper, more insidious threats that they would need to confront. As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, Elara knew that they would need to be vigilant, not just against their political enemies, but against the unseen forces that sought to manipulate the fate of the kingdoms. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the land, the trio knew that their work was far from over. The night's victory had been hard-won, but it was only the beginning of a much longer and more arduous journey. The stability of the kingdoms was in jeopardy, and the fight to protect them had only just begun. Mara, Kale, and Elara stood together, their resolve strengthened by the trials they had faced. They would need to draw on all their skills, their knowledge, and their courage to navigate the tumultuous times ahead. The fate of the realms was uncertain, but they were determined to do whatever it took to preserve the fragile peace that now hung in the balance. As Mara, Kale, and Elara reconvened at their temporary base, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on them. The room, dimly lit and filled with the hum of hurried conversations, was thick with tension. They had barely had a moment to catch their breath before the dire news from both kingdoms began to filter in. The assassination attempt, though ultimately thwarted, had sent shockwaves through the political landscape. Word of the incident had spread with alarming speed, igniting a firestorm of speculation and fear. The trio listened intently as their informants relayed the latest updates, each report more disheartening than the last. The assassination attempt, while unsuccessful, had done its damage. The kingdoms, already on edge, were now teetering on the brink of chaos. In the immediate aftermath, the streets had erupted in confusion and panic, as citizens struggled to make sense of the unfolding events. Rumors and half-truths circulated rapidly, further fanning the flames of unrest. The revelation that a conspiracy had been in play, even if only partially uncovered, had shaken the populace's trust in their leaders. The sense of security that had been painstakingly cultivated over years of diplomacy now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a growing sense of fear and uncertainty. Mara's mind raced as she processed the implications. The conspiracy they had fought so hard to unearth was far more insidious than they had anticipated. While they had managed to capture the mastermind behind the assassination plot, the network that supported them was still very much alive and active. This network's exposure had opened a Pandora's box of political and social tensions that threatened to spiral out of control. Mara could see the cracks forming in the fragile peace they had worked so tirelessly to uphold, and she knew that the battle was far from over. Their mission had entered a new, more dangerous phase, one where the stakes were higher and the risks greater. Kale, always the strategist, was already thinking several steps ahead. He understood that their actions had inadvertently triggered a chain reaction, one that could unravel the delicate balance of power between the kingdoms. The news of the failed assassination had not only weakened the standing of the ruling factions but also emboldened their enemies. Opportunists within the political arena were likely to seize upon the chaos, using it to further their own agendas. The resulting power struggle could plunge the kingdoms into a state of turmoil from which they might not recover. Kale knew they needed to act swiftly and decisively to contain this situation before it spiraled out of control. Elara, with her deep understanding of the arcane and the ancient forces at play, felt a different kind of unease. The events of the night had not just destabilized the political landscape, they had also disrupted the delicate balance of magic that underpinned the realms. The artifact they had secured, while crucial in thwarting the assassination, was now a focal point of power and danger. Its mere presence could attract unwanted attention from those who sought to exploit its potential for their own gain. Elara realized that they needed to protect the artifact at all costs, even as they navigated the treacherous waters of political intrigue. The stakes were not just about the kingdom's survival, but about preserving the balance of power that kept darker forces at bay. The trio knew that their next steps would be critical. They could not afford to be reactive. They needed to take the initiative and regain control of the narrative. This meant not only addressing the immediate threat posed by the conspiracy but also shoring up the political and social structures that were now under strain. Mara, Kale, and Elara began to formulate a plan, drawing on their combined strengths and resources. They would need to act quickly to quash the unrest and restore a sense of order before the situation became irreparable. But even as they strategized, the enormity of the task ahead loomed large, and they knew that the path forward would be fraught with peril. As they prepared to set their plans in motion, the trio could not shake the feeling that they were racing against time. The peace they had fought so hard to protect was hanging by a thread, and any misstep could lead to disaster. The unrest that had been sparked by the assassination attempt was spreading like wildfire, threatening to engulf both kingdoms in chaos. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Mara, Kale, and Elara were resolved to see their mission through. They had faced impossible challenges before, and they would face this one with the same determination and grit. Their bond, forged in the heat of battle, would be their strength as they braced themselves for the trials ahead. The alliances that had once served as the bedrock of peace between the kingdoms were now showing signs of fracture. The failed assassination attempt, coupled with the revelation of a deep-rooted conspiracy, had sown seeds of distrust among the ruling factions. Where there had once been cooperation and mutual respect, there was now suspicion and fear. Leaders who had previously worked together were now questioning each other's motives, and the bonds that had taken years to forge were beginning to unravel. The atmosphere was tense, with every conversation and negotiation tinged with the unspoken fear that betrayal could come from any quarter. As the news of the night's events spread, anger erupted from unexpected places. Some factions, feeling vulnerable and exposed by the conspiracy, lashed out, accusing their allies of complicity or negligence. Old grievances that had been buried in the name of peace were suddenly resurfacing, fueling the flames of discord. The mistrust that had taken root was quickly growing, threatening to spiral out of control. In the streets, the common folk, too, were beginning to show signs of unrest, their fear of the unknown manifesting in protests and calls for action. The kingdoms were teetering on the brink of chaos, and the stability that had once been taken for granted was now a distant memory. Mara and Kale, seasoned in the art of diplomacy and war, knew that the situation required immediate and decisive action. The longer the instability persisted, the greater the risk that the kingdoms would descend into open conflict. The trust that had been shattered needed to be restored, and that would require a show of strength and unity from the leaders who remained. Mara, with her deep understanding of the political landscape, knew that the first step was to bring the factions back to the table. She had to find a way to remind them of the common goals that had once united them, even as they grappled with the fear and anger that now clouded their judgment. Kale, ever the strategist, recognized that this was not just a battle for hearts and minds, but for control of the narrative. If they could frame the conspiracy as an external threat, one that targeted everyone equally, they might be able to redirect the anger and fear into a unified response. But this would require careful planning and execution. Any misstep could be catastrophic, deepening the divisions rather than healing them. Cale began to work on a strategy to present to the ruling factions, one that would emphasize their shared interests and the dangers of allowing their enemies to exploit their current disarray. It was a delicate balance, but one that needed to be struck quickly. The task ahead was daunting. Restoring order would require more than just words. It would require tangible actions that demonstrated the kingdom's ability to protect themselves from future threats. Mara and Cale began coordinating with their allies, seeking to deploy forces where they were most needed and to bolster the defenses of the most vulnerable regions. They knew that showing strength was just as important as negotiating peace. The people needed to see that their leaders were in control, that they were capable of defending the kingdoms from both internal and external threats. This show of force would be a key component of their strategy to restore stability. Even as they worked to stabilize the situation, Mara and Cale could not ignore the underlying problems that had led to the current crisis. The conspiracy had been able to take root because of existing tensions and vulnerabilities within the kingdoms. Addressing these would require long-term solutions, ones that went beyond just quelling the immediate unrest. They would need to work on rebuilding trust from the ground up, addressing the concerns and grievances that had been ignored for too long. It was a monumental task, but one that Mara and Cale were determined to tackle. They knew that true peace could only be achieved if the foundations were solid, and that meant addressing the weaknesses that had been exposed. As they prepared to implement their plan, Mara and Cale were acutely aware of the stakes. The kingdoms were at a crossroads, and the decisions made in the coming days would determine their future. The immediate priority was to prevent further escalation, but they knew that this was just the beginning. The road to recovery would be long and difficult, fraught with challenges that would test their resolve and their leadership. But they were ready to face it, armed with the knowledge that their actions now would shape the fate of the kingdoms for years to come. They were not just fighting to restore order. They were fighting to build a lasting peace, one that could withstand the tests of time. Elara, known for her scholarly wisdom, dove into the vast collection of ancient texts and historical accounts that she had meticulously gathered over the years. The weight of the current crisis pressed heavily upon her, but she remained focused, sifting through the pages with a keen eye for anything that could offer insight into their predicament. The history of both kingdoms was riddled with conflicts and resolutions, and Elara was determined to find parallels that could guide them through the turmoil. Her mind raced as she connected the dots between past events and their current situation, searching for strategies that had worked before and could be adapted to their needs. The room where Elara worked was filled with the soft rustle of parchment, and the occasional murmur of her voice as she read aloud passages that caught her attention. Each text she consulted added a piece to the puzzle, helping her to form a clearer picture of the challenges they faced. The historical accounts were not just stories of battles and treaties. They were lessons in human behavior, in the rise and fall of empires, and in the delicate balance of power that had shaped their world. Elara knew that understanding the mistakes and successes of the past was key to navigating the present crisis. Her scholarly approach, combined with her deep understanding of the political landscape, made her an invaluable asset to their cause. As she continued her research, Elara found herself drawn to accounts of other political upheavals, moments in history when kingdoms had been on the brink of collapse and had managed to pull back from the edge. She analyzed the strategies that had been employed, the alliances that had been forged, and the diplomatic maneuvers that had prevented disaster. These historical precedents provided a framework for the plan she was helping to devise. Elara knew that while the situations were not identical, the underlying principles of diplomacy, trust building, and strategic communication were timeless. She meticulously noted down her findings, preparing to present them to Mara and Kale as they worked to stabilize the situation. When she finally looked up from her texts, Alara's mind was brimming with ideas. She could see a path forward, one that involved not only addressing the immediate unrest but also laying the groundwork for long-term stability. Her insights, drawn from centuries of recorded history, would be crucial in guiding their next steps. Gathering her notes, she sought out Mara and Kale, her voice calm but filled with urgency as she began to outline her recommendations. "We need to act quickly to calm the unrest and present a united front," she urged, her words carrying the weight of both historical wisdom and present-day necessity. She knew that time was of the essence, and any delay could further exacerbate the already volatile situation. Alara's calm demeanor and clear-headed analysis provided a much-needed sense of direction in the midst of the chaos. Mara and Kale listened intently as she laid out her plan, each point supported by historical precedent and strategic reasoning. Her proposal was to first address the most immediate threats, the growing unrest and the fraying alliances, by initiating a series of swift, decisive actions. This would involve not only quelling the fears of the populace but also reassuring the leaders of both kingdoms that their alliances could still be salvaged. Alara emphasized the importance of showing strength and unity, both to the public and to the political factions that were now wavering in their support. As they discussed the plan, Alara's role became even more central. Her knowledge of ancient lore and magical artifacts, combined with her understanding of history, allowed her to anticipate potential pitfalls and offer solutions before they became problems. She was the steady hand guiding them through the storm, her insights providing a beacon of clarity amidst the uncertainty. Alara knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that they had the tools and knowledge to navigate it. Her confidence in their ability to overcome the crisis was infectious, bolstering the resolve of both Mara and Kale as they prepared to implement their strategy. With their plan taking shape, the trio felt a renewed sense of purpose. Alara's scholarly wisdom had not only informed their approach but had also reassured them that there was a way forward, even in the face of such daunting odds. As they moved to put their plan into action, the weight of the situation still pressed heavily upon them, but there was now a glimmer of hope. Alara's insights had illuminated a path through the darkness, and with her guidance, they were ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that the road to restoring peace would be long and fraught with difficulties, but with Alara's expertise leading the way, they were prepared to navigate the treacherous waters of political instability. Kale's strategic mind shifted gears, pivoting from the immediacy of physical conflict to the equally daunting battlefield of diplomacy and crisis management. The situation demanded swift, decisive action, and Kale was acutely aware that time was of the essence. He immediately began reaching out to key leaders and influential figures within both kingdoms, using every bit of his diplomatic acumen to initiate dialogue. "We must assure them of our commitment and transparency," he insisted, his tone reflecting the urgency of the moment. Kale knew that the trust which had been shattered by the recent events could only be rebuilt through open communication and a demonstration of unwavering resolve. As he navigated the delicate conversations, Kale carefully chose his words, mindful of the fragile state of the alliances. His approach was twofold: to calm the fears of those who had been shaken by the assassination attempt, and to reassure them that their leadership was still strong and capable of handling the crisis. He understood that any hesitation or sign of weakness could further erode the already tenuous relationships between the kingdoms. Each conversation was a balancing act, requiring him to be both firm and empathetic, to acknowledge the gravity of the situation, while also offering hope for a path forward. The challenges were immense. Kale encountered leaders who were skeptical, their confidence in the alliance severely undermined. Some were openly hostile, questioning the wisdom of continuing to support a cause that now seemed riddled with danger and uncertainty. But Cale, with his sharp mind and deep understanding of political dynamics, worked tirelessly to address their concerns. He reminded them of the greater good that had originally brought them together, emphasizing the shared goals that still held value. His arguments were not just about placating fears. They were about reigniting the sense of purpose that had once united them. The longer we delay, the more difficult it will be to mend these relationships, Cale warned as he pushed forward with his diplomatic efforts. He was keenly aware that the window for repairing the damage was rapidly closing. Every moment that passed without resolution only deepened the divisions, making reconciliation more challenging. Cale's strategy involved not only direct communication with leaders but also leveraging the influence of trusted allies who could help sway the more doubtful factions. He coordinated a series of meetings and discussions, ensuring that every key player was engaged and that the message of unity and resilience was consistently reinforced. Cale's efforts were a race against time, and he felt the pressure mounting with each passing hour. The growing discontent within the kingdoms was palpable, and it threatened to spill over into outright rebellion if not addressed swiftly. Cale used every resource at his disposal, including secret networks of informants and loyalists, to gauge the mood on the ground and adjust his tactics accordingly. He was relentless in his pursuit of stability, understanding that restoring faith in their leadership was crucial to averting further disaster. His work was methodical, each move carefully calculated to bring the fractured alliances back from the brink. Despite the relentless pace and the immense pressure, Cale remained focused and composed. He knew that the stakes were incredibly high, but he also believed in the strength of the alliances and the possibility of redemption. His determination was fueled by a deep sense of responsibility, not just to the kingdoms and their people, but to Mara and Alara, who were counting on him to navigate this critical juncture. Cale's resolve never wavered, even as the enormity of the task weighed heavily on him. He was driven by the conviction that with enough effort and skill, the alliances could be saved, and the peace they had all fought so hard for could be preserved. As his efforts began to yield results, Cale felt a tentative sense of hope. Slowly but surely, the leaders he had reached out to started to come around, their anger and fear giving way to cautious optimism. The road to full reconciliation was still long and fraught with challenges, but Cale's relentless diplomacy had managed to halt the slide toward chaos. With the immediate crisis beginning to stabilize, he knew that the real work of rebuilding trust and strengthening the alliances was just beginning. But for the first time since the assassination attempt, there was a glimmer of hope that peace might be restored. Mara took on the critical responsibility of addressing the public and calming the fears that had gripped the populace. Stepping into the role of a reassuring leader, she prepared her speeches with meticulous care, aiming to provide both comfort and clarity. She knew that her words had to strike a delicate balance between acknowledging the gravity of the situation and instilling confidence in the government's ability to handle the crisis. With a firm resolve, she crafted her messages to address the concerns of the citizens while reinforcing the notion that their leaders were working tirelessly to safeguard their future. As she addressed the crowds, Mara's voice resonated with a blend of authority and empathy. "Our mission was never just about preventing an assassination," she declared, her tone unwavering. Her words were designed not only to reassure but to remind the public of the larger context behind their efforts. She spoke of the assassination attempt as a catalyst for a broader struggle, emphasizing that their ultimate goal was to protect the stability of their kingdoms and ensure that peace prevailed despite the challenges they faced. Her speeches were a call to unity, urging the people to stand together in the face of adversity. Mara's presence in the public eye was crucial for maintaining morale and trust. She understood that the uncertainty and fear among the populace could quickly erode confidence in their leaders if not properly addressed. By confronting the situation head-on and communicating directly with the people, Mara aimed to provide transparency and foster a sense of solidarity. Her speeches were infused with a sense of urgency and determination, reflecting her deep commitment to navigating through the crisis and emerging stronger on the other side. In addition to addressing the public, Mara took proactive steps to engage with community leaders and influencers. She organized town hall meetings and participated in local forums to hear directly from the citizens, address their concerns, and offer reassurances. These interactions allowed her to gauge the public sentiment more accurately and to demonstrate that their leaders were actively listening and responding to the needs of the people. Mara's approach was comprehensive, aiming to bridge the gap between the government and the populace and to rebuild the fractured trust. Despite her efforts, the weight of the situation was never far from her mind. The speeches, while designed to soothe, were a stark reminder of the monumental task ahead. The public's fears and the political fallout from the assassination attempt were complex challenges that required ongoing attention and strategic management. Mara's resolve was tested as she navigated the delicate task of maintaining public confidence while simultaneously working behind the scenes to stabilize the political landscape. Her speeches were met with a range of reactions, from cautious optimism to lingering skepticism. While many found solace in her words and the visible commitment of their leaders, others remained wary, their trust shaken by the recent events. Mara remained undeterred, understanding that rebuilding confidence would be a gradual process. She continued to address the public with unwavering determination, knowing that every reassurance and every effort to connect with the community was a step towards restoring stability and ensuring that peace could be preserved. As Mara concluded her latest address, she was acutely aware of the long road ahead. The immediate challenge of calming public fears had been met with a degree of success, but the deeper work of restoring political stability and trust within the kingdoms was ongoing. With the public's attention focused on her assurances, Mara turned her attention back to the complex task of navigating the political and social landscape, fully committed to seeing their mission through to a successful resolution. As the days wore on, Mara, Kale, and Alara immersed themselves in a grueling schedule of tasks aimed at restoring stability. Their efforts were focused on a myriad of critical activities, including back-channel negotiations with influential figures who had become skeptical of the current leadership. Each conversation was meticulously crafted to address grievances and build bridges between feuding factions. The weight of their responsibilities was evident in their exhausted but determined expressions, as they worked around the clock to mend the fractures in their political landscape. The trio also took on the role of mediators, carefully navigating the complex web of conflicting interests that had arisen from the fallout of the failed assassination attempt. They held numerous meetings with leaders from both kingdoms, striving to find common ground and forge compromises. Their diplomatic skills were put to the test as they sought to pacify factions that had been driven to opposing sides by fear and suspicion. Every successful mediation was a small victory in the larger battle to restore harmony and trust. Re-establishing trust was perhaps the most challenging aspect of their task. The recent events had left deep scars, and regaining the confidence of the public and political leaders required persistent effort and genuine engagement. Mara's speeches and public appearances continued, but her focus had shifted to personal interactions with community leaders and stakeholders. Her approach was hands-on, involving direct dialogues to address concerns and reinforce the message of unity and recovery. Despite their tireless work, the road to recovery was fraught with obstacles. The political landscape remained volatile, with occasional outbursts of unrest and criticism from those who remained unconvinced by the efforts of Mara, Kale, and Alara. Each challenge they faced was a reminder of the delicate nature of their situation and the significant work still required to rebuild the fractured alliances. Their resilience was tested repeatedly as they tackled each problem with strategic precision and unwavering resolve. Gradually, the fruits of their labor began to emerge. Signs of progress were evident as the kingdoms started to regain a semblance of order. The public's mood shifted from one of despair to cautious optimism as stability returned, albeit slowly. The efforts of the trio to address the immediate concerns and repair the damaged relationships were beginning to bear fruit, with more constructive dialogues and agreements taking shape. However, the recent events had left their mark, and the scars of the turmoil would take time to heal fully. The kingdoms were recovering, but the process was long and arduous. The trio was acutely aware that their work was far from finished. They remained vigilant and committed, knowing that the path to complete restoration was still uncertain and that ongoing efforts would be necessary to solidify the gains they had achieved. As they continued their work, Mara, Kale, and Alara remained united in their mission. Their combined efforts had started to steer the kingdoms back towards stability, but they knew that true healing would require both time and perseverance. The recent crisis had tested their resolve and capacity, but it had also strengthened their bonds and clarified their shared purpose. With determination and solidarity, they faced the future, prepared to address whatever challenges lay ahead in their quest for lasting peace and stability. The aftermath of the battle had left an indelible mark on Mara, Kale, and Alara, revealing the immense weight of their responsibilities. As they surveyed the landscape of their recent victory, it became increasingly clear that their mission was far from complete. The conspiracy they had partially dismantled had cast a long shadow, one that continued to affect the political and social fabric of both kingdoms. The immediate danger had been quelled, but the residual effects of their struggle were pervasive, manifesting in widespread mistrust and instability that threatened to unravel the fragile peace they had fought so hard to achieve. With the battlefield behind them, the trio turned their focus to the more daunting task of preserving the delicate equilibrium they had managed to restore. Their primary goal was to ensure that the peace they had secured would not be short-lived but rather endure amidst the turbulent aftermath. This involved not only addressing the immediate concerns of their allies and subjects, but also anticipating and mitigating any further risks that could jeopardize the newfound stability. They worked diligently to implement measures that would fortify their positions and prevent the resurgence of discord. Mara took on the role of a unifying force, reaching out to various factions and communities to rebuild trust and reinforce the message of reconciliation. Her efforts were centered around public engagements and behind-the-scenes negotiations, aimed at mending the rifts that had formed. She understood that healing the wounds inflicted by the conspiracy required more than just words. It needed tangible actions and a visible commitment to the well-being of the kingdoms. Her speeches were crafted to inspire confidence and underscore the shared goals of peace and prosperity. Meanwhile, Kale's expertise was crucial in strategizing for long-term stability. He concentrated on developing frameworks for ongoing dialogue and cooperation between key stakeholders. His role involved crafting policies that would address the underlying issues exposed by the conspiracy, ensuring that they were not merely temporary fixes but sustainable solutions. Kale also focused on enhancing the kingdom's security measures to prevent any future breaches, reinforcing the foundations upon which their hard-won peace was built. Alara, with her deep knowledge of history and ancient lore, played a vital role in understanding and applying the lessons learned from the crisis. She meticulously studied the events and patterns that led to the upheaval, seeking to extract valuable insights that could guide future actions. Her analysis provided a strategic advantage, helping the trio to anticipate potential threats and devise proactive measures. Alara's scholarly approach added depth to their planning, ensuring that their strategies were informed by both historical context and current realities. The task of securing the future of both kingdoms was a monumental one, marked by the need for continuous vigilance and adaptability. The lessons learned from this crisis were not merely academic but practical, shaping the trio's approach to governance and diplomacy. They knew that the road to a stronger, more resilient future was paved with their collective efforts and dedication. The challenges they faced were substantial, but their resolve remained unshaken, driven by the shared commitment to a stable and prosperous future. As they worked towards these goals, Mara, Kale, and Ilara remained acutely aware of the profound impact of their actions. The legacy of their struggle was a constant reminder of the responsibilities they bore, and they approached their tasks with a renewed sense of purpose. The crisis had tested their limits and forged their unity, equipping them with the strength and resolve needed to navigate the complexities of their mission. With each step, they sought to build on the progress they had made and ensure that the peace they had fought so hard to achieve would endure for generations to come.